What if I told you we discovered Ollie's identity? You probably immediately think it's the same prototype theory that everyone else has been telling. But those who already know and watch the news probably already know that Ollie physically can't be prototype. Who hasn't heard this news yet is wondering why not. You see, it turns out we always had a big clue in the palm of our hand, which was pretty well hidden in the very first chapter. It was in that chapter that Ollie's personality began to reveal itself. Who played the first part, but not just played, but played carefully to get into the story itself, you must remember where our path began and from whom the first task was given. And before we continue, write below in the comments what started the first chapter, so to speak, test your memory and knowledge of this game. I hope you have already written and are going to continue. So here we are. Our whole adventure, so to speak, began with a mysterious note that sent us on our first mission. That was the starting point when it all began. Everything would be fine if we knew who wrote that note, but alas, we will never know, we can only guess. But when we first heard Ollie, it all started to come together. If you look closely, you can see that this note is the handwriting of a child or even some kind of drawing, because the note is literally all drawn with colored pencils. Further on in the story, as you probably remember, the closest character to us was Poppy, and she is also in some way a suspect.
But I can't just let you leave. What's happening down here is bigger than all of us. And I need you.
Why? Because she was locked up until the end of the chapter, which of course could have played into Ollie's hands, and that just brings us to the most interesting part. She couldn't write a note and pass it on because she was locked up the whole time. But wait, we've gotten far away from Ollie and his identity. So, what do we have? First of all, we hear a child's voice, and at this point, only he could have written a letter because the handwriting was childish and everything was colored. Who could do that but a child? He's also the only physical person in the factory who can text. I think at this point, everyone's wondering who he is. Judging from the fact that he gives us tasks, he's one of those who wants to overthrow the throne of prototype. Basically at this point, if we collect all the voice lines and tasks that we had during all the parts, we can easily uncover his motive. And most importantly, it leads to the main theory that we've encountered on YouTube, which is the prototype Ollie? With this information, if that's not enough evidence for you, then listen carefully below, but in the meantime, give it a like if you've enjoyed everything that's happened so far. Let's move on. You'll ask, what do you mean deny it? Actually, Mob Entertainment hid some details and files of the game from us, and it was done at the last moment. Thanks to those guys who found those details and files from the game, because now we know that Ollie actually had her own room not far from Kissy Missy's room where we saw her for the first time. Also in the game files it was mentioned that Ollie was not to be the last person in Playcare, and in principle all information about him was already revealed a long time ago in the code of the game, but as you understand, such leaks do not live long and they were immediately removed from the internet. Well, if everything is already deleted and destroyed, how can we find out the truth about him? Let's first look at the facts that are already available. Those who follow the game updates and insider information from the developers probably already know that most of the details they have planned for several parts ahead. When they chose to give Ollie his own room, during the early stages of developing Chapter 3, they obviously recognized that this was a component of the plot they wanted to explore more in their future games. For the real location of Chapter 4, they also left this similar early development information. The fact that we were able to locate the prison early on in the game files regarding the same issue led us to the conclusion that Ollie was, at the very least, supposed to be an orphan at the factory. This was supported by the fact that all of this contributed to the supposition. As a result, we are aware that the prototype does not have any connection to the factory orphans in his particular configuration of the relationship. Regarding this identification problem, it is quite evident that something is incorrect. The fact that Ollie is either an unidentified toy or the subject of a new experiment involving abandoned children is now something that we are aware of. Putting it all together, you probably have only one question: who is Ollie if prototype has nothing to do with him? And in fact, everything I just mentioned is only a small piece of evidence. You see, the developers left behind a hidden idea that proves that essentially all the orphans in Playcare territory are alive and well. Proof of this idea is the fact that in fact Catnap was protecting the orphans, which in turn was confirmed by Miss Delight in one of her voiceovers. So everyone knows that the Hour of Joy was made especially for the still living employees of the factory. And since these experiments were originally orphans too, they probably came for orphans like themselves, and it didn't even make sense for them to attack them since they understood what it was like to be an orphan. And that group of real people probably included Ollie. As for Ollie and the other orphans, there is a lot of evidence that we are actually moving in the right direction. For example, one piece of evidence is that if we take into account the timeline of the Hour of Joy, which took place in 1995, we know that Ollie couldn't even talk like a child at that time. Ollie really should have just been an experiment like the others, not just a boy surviving the 1995 incident. In fact, the game's creator eventually revealed that Ollie could be a real toy experiment. Basically, we can expect that in Chapter 4 some sample characters or toys may return in one form or another. In particular, we are shown a new toy such as Fox, which is actually also some evidence that it could be our character. Particularly because as we see Ollie's name during voice lines is green, which could indicate that Ollie is some kind of green character. And the same character Fox matches almost perfectly with the already known character from the pictures of Chapter 4. And even the posters from the official chapters show that in Chapter 4 there may be some circus or amusement park where this clown may appear. And this evidence has the most corroboration with any of the other possibilities we've heard before in other YouTube videos about Ollie's theories. Another theory is that Ollie may actually be an evil character. Even though Ollie helps the player on numerous occasions, it's safe to say that there's still a good chance that Ollie could turn out to be an evil character. In fact, if we were to place a bet, we'd probably put money on him turning out to be a villain in a mind-bending twist in the next chapter. And there's evidence for that too, namely why didn't Ollie warn us about the red smoke? So when the power suddenly goes out after transferring the red smoke at the beginning of Chapter 3, who could have possibly been the one to tamper with this? Ollie is a suspect as he has power that dictates he can not only observe the protagonist via the camera system, but is also capable of sending things down to the player to help him. Ollie doesn't warn the protagonist about the red smoke either, even though the tape recordings and opening cutscene point towards the nefarious side effects when inhaling the mass. The question comes down to whether Poppy and Ollie are the good guys. Perhaps Poppy only knows Ollie through his voice, much like the protagonist, but we can confirm Ollie has yet to show his physical appearance. We can also confirm Ollie isn't a smiling critter as Dog Day was the last one alive before he was overrun by small smiling critters that seem to do Catnap's bidding. I am actually convinced that Ollie is a real person. Could Ollie be like a toy, a monster, or even human? I am uncertain. It seems like Poppy already recognizes Ollie, so a toy would be a great choice. There have been some interesting theories going around that Ollie might actually be Baby Long Legs, and I have to admit, it's not a bad theory. In Home Sweet Home, you'll find a cutout featuring 3 characters: Daddy Long Legs, Mommy Long Legs, and Baby Long Legs. One of the characters doesn't have a voice chatter to talk, while the others seem a bit static. Baby Long Legs might not have a voice to avoid sounding too similar to Ollie. It seems like Ollie has a youthful and boyish vibe, while Baby Long Legs could potentially tie together the theory that they are the same person. However, I continue to believe that Ollie is a genuine individual, regardless of the circumstances. And as I've already said, I believe Ollie is likely in the factory, and we may encounter them in Chapter 4 or possibly towards the end of Chapter 5. Write in the comments on how many points you estimate this theory, if you consider that 10 points it will happen, and 0, it is not possible. I look forward to hearing what you think in the comments. Now thank you for watching to the end, and until the next video, bye.